Hi everyone, so welcome to what is pretty much your last lesson on research methods in psychology for year 12. So there will be other lessons that you need to do in year 13 with research methods. It is a really large chunk of the course, so I know that some of you are just like, oh my goodness, why is this taking so long? It is a really big part of the course. So in the final exam for research methods, you are asked to complete 48 marks worth in one section, compared to 24 marks in every other section. And research methods questions can also appear in any of the other sections. So you could be asked things about maths and graphs and interpretations and things in any of the papers. So even though research methods is found in paper 2, it can be found in paper 1 and eventually in paper 3 when you go into year 13. So it is really important that you have a good grounding of research methods and that you're able to interpret it and use it confidently. Okay, so this lesson is actually one of my favourite lessons. It's not one that I would ideally like to do as a recording, but we will roll with it and we'll see how we go. If you are interested in any of the adverts that I refer to in this lesson, then you can always ask me when we are back together in class. But for now, we're looking at how does psychology affect our economy? And this, as a research methods topic, is all about how do you apply that knowledge of psychology to the real world? How does it affect money in the world? And even though you might not think that psychology has very many monetary gains, it is actually a huge business. So a lot of people forget that, drug treatments and things are worth a lot of money, that treating people for things like depression and stuff actually really helps the economy because it puts people back into work, etc., etc. And also things like advertising are actually all psychological ploys. So there is actually a lot of money in psychology, and if you become a business psychologist, well, you're really raking it in then. So usually what I do is I ask students to find an advert that they like. So you can do this by yourself. So you can have a little Google and think of an advert that you really, really like. And I want you to think about why you like it. Okay. So are there certain aspects that you like about the advert? Maybe it's the color, maybe it's the product, maybe it's the way that it's phrased, etc., etc. Is it funny? But have a little think about what it is you like. So you might want to pause the video and maybe go Googling. But I've got a couple here as well. So like a couple of adverts that are quite different in their structures and things. And keep that on a tab somewhere for later because we'll be referring back to this when later on in the lesson. So hopefully by the end of this lesson is that we will be able to explain that the study of behavioural economics is the study of social, emotional and cognitive factors of economic decisions. That sounds really, really fancy. Basically, it's about how does behaviour affect our spending? Okay, how does it affect our money? How does it affect our decisions on money? Okay, money is often thought of as quite cold and quite logical, but actually there's a lot of emotion and social factors that go into it, and these sorts of decisions can make or break a company. To be able to name at least one example of how psychology affects the economy, so this will be relevant to a lot of the topics that you've studied, especially in paper 1. So things like social influence, for example, are really, really good at demonstrating roles in the economy. So if you think about how normative social influence and informational social influence are able to affect the world, then in terms of studies and things, so it's like informational social influence showing us that 75% of people reuse their towels, and it led to a significant dip in the hotel's washing procedures. So, you know, these sorts of things do have an impact. They help save money, they help use money, etc., etc. What is the best way that we can use money? These are all questions that psychologists actually have to ask themselves. And to be able to apply psychological concepts to the way in which consumers behave, and the way that psychology can help improve public health to have a positive impact on the economy. So a lot of the campaigns that you see from the NHS and from charities and things like that, they have actually been designed by psychologists, and the success of them is actually down to several psychological factors. So I'm going to try and unpick this a little bit for you. And I'm aware that some of the examples I will use are maybe not normal in our current climate, but hopefully you can see where I'm coming from. So yes, you might not realise it, but psychology does make and it does save money as well. So much money is put into advertising, so much. And actually a lot of successful adverts come from psychological research. So as an arbitrary example, on a scale of 1 to 10, rate the brand John Lewis. Okay, just John Lewis, how do you feel about it right now? Okay, and I want you to go and watch a John Lewis advert. So this one is personally my favourite. It's the one about the snowman. So if you go away, have a little watch of that, then I want you to think about how you feel after watching that advert. Okay, how do you feel about John Lewis now? Do you feel more positive? Do you feel that your score has now increased? Well, that is because John Lewis has spent so much money to induce all those warm, fuzzy feelings of how you feel about Christmas, and it's got you to associate them with their brand. This is behavioural psychology. This is behaviourism in action. It's managed to get you to associate Christmas with John Lewis. Okay, and this is a psychological technique. So other examples of advertising. Branded goods. So branded goods are actually a study all by themselves in psychology. So people tend to rate branded goods more positively, and they tend to think they are better quality. So a lot of competitors will take advantage of this, and they will market products in a very, very, very similar way. So here's Herbal Essences. I'm sure the ladies will probably recognise this a little bit more. So Herbal Essences, well-known brand, all those lovely like rainforest, like hair adverts. And this is Asda's own brand. Spot the difference. And a lot of products do that. So Aldi is a really good one for doing brand fakes. So like things like their stackers, for example, so like the crisps in the tube. They're basically Pringles, but they're very much marketed in the same way, etc., etc. Like lots of brands in Tesco's and Asda and things like that, all their own brand stuff is very much marketed in a very similar way. Sainsbury's do the same thing, and basically what it's trying to do is it's trying to get you to think that their own brand stuff is just as good as the branded stuff. Okay, so by marketing it in a very similar packaging, by marketing it in a very similar colour scheme, etc., etc., what they're trying to do is get you to associate all those good feelings you have about a branded product with their non-branded product. So, can you think of any others? I've given you a few others, probably a few others that you can think of. It's also very much at play when you go shopping. So obviously shopping is not a very normal experience right now, but have a little think. So last shop that you went into could be a supermarket, could be a high street, so it doesn't really matter. There's psychological tricks at play in all of them. So have a think about what you saw, think about what you heard, mainly about the store, not about the people, okay? So was there any music? What was the first thing you saw when you went in? Like, what did you need to get? Where was it located in the store? And all of these things that you're now thinking about, all of these are actually psychological concepts. So here are some insights into this. Music will change throughout the day in stores. So at the start of the day, it's a lot softer, it's like much quieter. In the middle of the day, it's much louder, much more upbeat, so it's much more energetic. And in the evening, it softens out again. So the music changes, has its own rhythms through the day. In supermarkets, bread and milk are some of the things that we often need. They're usually first things on people's shopping lists, but these are the things that are furthest apart from each other in the store. So milk is generally somewhere near the front, near the fruit and veg. Bread is usually somewhere at the back of the store, like really, really far away. Why would you do that? Because these are the things people need most commonly. Why would you put them so separate? Well, it's to make you walk the entire store. It's to make you walk past all those really good buy one get one free deals and everything that's like cheap in between. It's to try and make you buy more things. So on your way to get your loaf of bread to go with milk, you've got to go past the crisp aisle, you've got to go past the chocolate aisle, you've got to go past the laundry detergent and ice cream, etc., etc. You go, oh, look at this deal, I'll put it in my basket, and before you know it, the 2 or 3 quid that you would have spent for milk and bread is now 20, 30 quid instead. And fruit and veg is also at the front. Why would you put fruit and veg at the front? Fruit and veg should really be at the end, because bananas, satsumas, apples, they all bruise, they all get squashed. Why would you not put that later, after you've put heavy things like tins and that into your shopping basket? Because it makes you feel healthy, makes you feel better about yourself when you go into the store and you're like, oh, look at all the colours. And you go, oh, look at my shopping basket, it's full of fruit and veg. Excellent, I'm being so healthy. So that means you're more likely to put the crisps and whatever in your basket as well. So hopefully you found an advert from before. If you haven't, then you might want to scroll back and have a little look at some of the ones that I've got. So what psychological techniques has it used on you? Why do you think you like that advert? Is it actually advertised at you? Is this advert made for you? Maybe you've picked something that is male. Maybe you've picked something that is female. Maybe you've picked something that is a product that you use. So how successful has it been? Would you go and buy that product, having a look at that advert? Do you think that it would induce you to buy things? Yeah, usually you have partners. I don't have partners today. But obviously there's lots of different adverts. Like you can see that even from the very small selection I had at the start of the lesson. And how does advertising benefit the economy? Well, very simple terms. If we advertise our products and people buy more products, that means that more people are spending money and money gets put back into the economy. So in terms of the money getting put back in, like taxes, etc., and this helps benefit the country. Sorry for anybody who's doing businesses like it's not that simple, miss. But if you have any further thoughts on that, like please feel free to email me and say, no miss, this is the way it's done. But in a very basic way, that's kind of how it works. Something I want you to think about though is, does it benefit the right people? Who does it benefit? Does it actually benefit the right people? And moving away from advertising, moving away from more money-centric things, how about for health reasons? How about for things that actually can benefit people's health and the way that they think about themselves? So there is actually a team in the UK called the Behavioural Insights Team, and they're called the Nudge Unit. And it is a department that uses psychology and applies it to government policies. So any government policies that we need to follow, the Nudge Unit will think of a campaign to help us do that. So you can go have a look at them there. Like, they do advertise for jobs and stuff, so if this is something that's really intriguing you, if this is something that you're like, oh, I quite fancy being a business psychologist and stuff like that, go have a look, because they do hire. And basically the aim of this unit is to change behaviour one small step at a time, aka you nudge people in the right direction, hence the Nudge Unit. And they've devised lots and lots of different campaigns that will try and encourage people to do the behaviours that the government wants them to do. So, for example, giving blood, getting people to pay taxes, reducing food waste, etc., etc. And all of these things are probably stuff that you've seen and that you recognise, but maybe not realise that a psychologist has designed them. So here is a case of just a very, very, very small thing leading to a change in behaviour. So, can't pronounce it, I'm afraid, but airport in Amsterdam wanted men to stop missing the urinals. I'm sure the fellas listening to this would agree that men's bathrooms are a little bit of a mess. So they tried putting signs up warning about the consequences, so be more careful, etc., etc., watch your aim, but it wasn't very successful. So what they did instead is they put a tiny little picture of a fly in the urinal. Okay, so why would they do that? Why is that important? Why would they put a small fly drawing in the urinal? And I imagine that most of the fellas listening to this have cracked it. Ladies, obviously this isn't a problem that we have, but essentially it gives men something to aim at. So it gives them a focus. So instead of just not aiming, it gives them something to focus on. And there was no formal research done on this, but cleaning costs were reduced by 8%. So there you go. So how does this affect you in the rest of your course? So we're not usually going to be talking about flies and urinals and things like that. Psychopathology is a really good topic, attachment is a really good topic, and like I mentioned before, social influence is also a really good topic about how psychology will impact our economy. Psychopathology is particularly interesting because it's talking about the impact of depression and mental health and how mental health impacts our economy. So absence from work is thought to cost 15 billion a year, and a third of this is related to mild mental health issues. So how much does that cost? Mathematicians in the room? So 5 billion. So 5 billion could be saved from being lost if we could actually think about ways that we can help these people. So there's been a huge drive to think about more mental health services, more therapies, because we could save 5 billion. You know, imagine how much more productive the workforce would be if we could look after them physically and emotionally. Like at the moment we have the NHS, which looks after our needs very well physically. If we had a really robust mental health system, then this would save you even more money. And therefore, psychological research into these different disorders is massive. So, I would like you to have a little think about this as well. So most of the work focuses on gains for the economies, and it's to prevent financial waste. So how would you apply it in all of these different areas? So if you pause the video now, have a little think. How could this affect psychology in the different areas? So how could it affect attachment? How could it affect psychopathology? How could it affect memory? How could it affect social influence? So how can we change people's habits to make them healthier? How can we save money by reducing staff absences? So let yourself have a little think, potentially jot some examples down, and I'm going to give you a couple of examples. So attachment, if we have securely attached babies in the world, then it means that we have to spend less money on helping these children as they grow up. It means we have to spend less money on social work, that we have to spend less money on interventions to help these children because they're securely attached and they're happy, and we don't need some of the interventions that we need when children are unfortunately abused or neglected. There's also things about that if we have robust attachment research, it means that we can encourage parents to go back to work when it's a good time, so encouraging mothers to go back to work at appropriate times after they've had their babies, etc., etc. Psychopathology I've already hinted at in terms of depression, but it works in a very similar way to the other disorders that we look at, so phobias and OCD. One of the particular things you might want to consider with psychopathology is drug treatments. So if we can find more effective routes for drugs or for psychological therapies, then the potential savings on this would also be huge. Memory, if we can maximise people's memories in terms of eyewitness testimony, etc., etc., potential money saved in trials, potential money saved in criminal fees, etc., etc. And social influence, again, more in terms of advertising and changing behaviours and things like that. So kind of like similar to the hint that I said before about like changing people's behaviours to be less wasteful, etc., etc. A lot of that stuff is being applied to things like recycling and stuff at the moment. So, final thing I want you to have a little go at for this lesson is a question. So, using examples, briefly discuss the implications of psychological research for the economy. So, essentially, this is what I've been talking about for the last 20 odd minutes, in that what you need to do is you need to think about how does psychological research affect the economy. So you can use any of the examples that I've talked about. You could talk about advertising, you could talk about the urinals, you could talk about depression, etc., etc. Because it's 6 marks, I would probably be using I would be using more than one. I'd be thinking more like 2 or 3, like just to briefly break it all down. When we think about implications is a slightly different way of thinking in psychology, in that it's about what could happen. Okay, so it's not what has happened, it's if I do this, what will happen, or what could happen. Okay, so what are the implications of psychological research? So if we do this psychological research, what would be the benefit to the economy? What would be the non-benefit to the economy? So have a think about what examples you could use. So implications, aka how does psychological research influence, affect, benefit or devalue economic prosperity? And how do your examples illustrate that? So if you're going to talk about the fly in the urinal, what are the consequences? What are the implications of men being more accurate with their aim, etc., etc.? So have a little go at that. I would like these sent back, please. So when you've had a go at this 6 marker, send it back. Make sure you write your notes up thoroughly. And if you've got any questions, you know where I am. Okay? Thanks for listening.